Let's talk about the StudioMagic One panel. First thing I'm going to do, we want to show you how to set up your workspace. You hit Window, then you go to Windows Extensions, StudioMagic One, that's where it's stored, and there it is on your screen. Now let's go to Windows, Extensions, and bring in StudioMagic 2. There we go, StudioMagic 2. Now as you see, there's a lot of clutter, so what we want to do is we want to show you how to dock this. So the next thing we're going to do is pick out some of your favorites. In this case, I happen to use layers. You guys might use actions or libraries, but I just happen to use layers, and sometimes I use actions. And then let's go ahead, and this time I'm going to use the tools. There we go. Now I'm just going to go ahead and dock it. And when you do that, you're going to see a blue line. So I'm just going to drag it over here, and we'll just move the panels in place here. And now let's grab this panel, and I like to keep it up and down, and as you see, there's a blue line right there. When you see the blue line, it's docked. Now let's go ahead and dock the toolbar, and once again you'll see the blue line, and there we go. So now what I want to do is I want to be able to save the workspace. So we're going to go to Windows, Workspace, New Workspace. I'm going to name it StudioMagic Palettes. And then I'm going to hit Save. And when I hit Save, it saves it, but actually you really want to shut Photoshop down and restart it again to make sure that you have definitely saved it. So let's close the StudioMagic Palettes. And let's go back to Windows, our workspace, and as you can see, come down below here, it says reset the StudioMagic palettes. Just click on that, and there they are, they're all set. And then after saving your palette, close Photoshop and reopen it again, and that will save your work. There are 3 lines of defense in obtaining that perfect cutout. Number 1 is auto cutout. And it's going to get it right the first time with the perfect selection. That usually occurs when there are no ragged edges or flyaway hair. There has to be a solid color background with contrasting colors between the subject and the background. I like to think of a black bowling ball against a white background, and I usually use the magic wand tool. The second line of defense, detailed cutout. I use it mostly for sky replacements by removing unwanted pixels behind leaves and branches of trees, or behind flyaway hair, which I'll be demonstrating later on. The third line of defense, Pro Mask. It's usually my last line of defense to make further refinements by outputting to a layer mask for final touch-up. I really use it all the time. First, there's the auto cutout. We use a solid background or contrasting foreground and background. And then we have the detailed cutout, which I use basically for flyaway hair and sky replacements. It removes unwanted pixels behind the leaves and branches of trees. And then the choose detect outside edges is when the subject converges on all 3 sides. And I use that for sky replacement always. I check that. And then we have remove stray pixels, leave it always unchecked. And last but not least is going to be Pro Mask. I use Pro Mask when I have a complicated cutout and I cannot completely refine my selection in Selected Mask, also known as Refine Edge. It's the last line of defense in achieving that perfect cutout. I use it all the time. I can add back or subtract any of the unwanted pixels. Okay, we're going to get into auto cutout, and it's used when you have a well-defined contrasting subject against the background, and this lovely model is just absolutely perfect for that. And I'm going to go into very details now. Hit the tolerance at 32. Let's make sure that you select the Add to Selection. And now I'm going to go ahead and use the Magic Wand tool to begin clicking on the gray background. And as you can see, I'm just adding to the selection here. And when I'm finished selecting, I'm going to bring up my quick mask mode, and it helps me to visualize what's selected and what's not. And this looks like a really good selection here. So I'm just going to keep clicking away. And now let's go to auto cutout. And I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to turn off the neutral gray layer that is provided by StudioMagic for visual purposes, turn it back on. And now let's just go ahead and drag our lovely model onto the background. And we're just going to add a shadow. I'm going to resize her, and I'm going to add a shadow. Now the shadow caster, we're going to go into great detail, but I just kind of wanted you to get an idea of how quickly these shadows work. So I'm just going to go to the shadow caster. We're just going to add a shadow, and it automatically comes in at a 2 o'clock shadow, and I think I'll just leave it at that. This background is very irregular. We can't use the magic wand tool because it has irregular shapes and tones. So let's grab the quick select tool, and I want to make sure that the check auto enhance. It gives you a tighter selection. Make sure that's checked. Make sure that you go to preferences because we want the same brush. And the brush that I'm using there's a drop down that says cursor, and let's choose the right brush. This is the normal brush tip and the one that shows the crosshairs, because the crosshairs shows the pluses and the minuses when you're doing your selecting. So let's close that out, and I'm going to zoom in, and let's go ahead and using the quick select tool, I'm going to go ahead and select from the inside, and I'm very carefully going to go in. And the intelligence is built in, and you'll see how wonderful Photoshop is because it does grab the outside of the subject. Okay, and now I'm going to use the minus sign. I'm going to hold my command key down, or Alt if you're a PC, and I'm going to subtract from the selection, as you're going to see here. There we go. Now with the plus sign, I'm going to add back just a little bit. There we go. Now let's back out of it, because what I want to do is I want to output this to a layer mask, and I'm going to use the Pro Select. So let's go ahead, and I'll make a couple of mistakes here because I want to be able to take it into the last line of defense to show you how that works. And as far as the trousers on the outside there on the right, I'm going to make a mistake there as well. And eventually, okay, there we go. And now I'm going to select Pro Mask. We're going to hit Detailed Cutout. And now we're in the selected mask, and also known as the refine edge. All your values, as you see, are pre-selected. The overlay mode is what I like to use. People like onion skin. I happen to like the overlay mode. And I'm not going to make any changes. I'm going to output this to a layer mask right now, because I usually do that when I have refine edge or trees and flyaway hair. That's when I do that. Now the last line of defense, as you can see, we're into the outputting to a layer mask, and there it is. And you want to make sure that the brush is in the white position, automatically defaulted by StudioMagic, and it selects the brush for you. You want to make sure that the brush is nice and hard, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint back. And it's that simple. There we go. And now what I want to do is just maybe paint back a little bit while it's still in the white mode, which is the paint back. Now I'm going to turn it to, I'm going to hit X on the keyboard, and it goes from white to black, and black is in the erase mode, and now I'm going to start erasing around his trousers. And maybe that's a little too much, but it's okay. I'm happy with it. And now let's go ahead, and there's a little area by his ear and his hair up there. I'm going to go ahead and erase that while it's still in the erase mode. And that's pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and back out of this a little bit. And his name is Ron, and I'm going to drag Ron onto the background here. And I'm going to go ahead and resize him. And then I want to make sure that I apply the layer mask. So there's a drop down, and you just apply the layer mask, and your shadow will work better. Now let's go ahead and add a shadow. So I'm going to click create a shadow. It automatically comes in at 2 o'clock. We're going to cover shadows a lot more during the demonstration. And we did wall back right. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to modify it a little bit by softening it using my sliders in real time. And then I'll go ahead and modify the intensity. I'll move my sliders over. There we go. And I'll modify the softness a little bit as well. That looks pretty good. Now let's go ahead and use the light brush. I'm going to paint with light. I'll put a 55% adjustment layer over it, and I'll paint through the mask and leave a very nice vignette. And make sure the hardness is soft. And there's the vignette, and that should do it. Now I'm going to demonstrate how to remove flyaway hair. First thing we're going to do is select the Magic Wand tool, and then I'm going to go ahead and select the Add to Selection button, which is very important. And let's keep the tolerance at around 20. And now I'm going to begin to start clicking on the background, and I'm going to keep adding to my selection. There we go. And I'm going to continue clicking until I'm finished. And now I'm hitting Q on my keyboard. That brings up the red mask to review my selection. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit Detailed Cutout. And that is going to bring me into the Selected Mask mode, also known as Refine Edge if you're using earlier versions of Photoshop. And now with the Refine Edge brush selected by default, I can now use my bracket keys to size the brush accordingly and begin to refine my selection. With the Fine Edge brush selected, I'm going to slowly go around the hairline. I'm going to stay on the outside of it. I'm only going to refine the edges. And anything that I missed, I'm going to go back again and pick up. And there's still a little bit of white ghosting behind the hair, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of touch that up, and a little bit I guess on the right side just under her chin there. Very good, and that should do it. And now when satisfied, I'm going to click OK. And now I'm going to click off the neutral gray layers supplied by StudioMagic for visual purposes, and the cutout subject is displayed on a transparent background. Okay, I'm going to drag the cutout over, and I want to compare her to the original. I'll drag her from the layer palette, and let's put her nice and close to the original, and let's take a look, and I'd say that looks pretty darn good. Okay, I'd like to show you the Adobe one-click selection tool. It's brand new. It started in 2018 plus. It's a great starting point for selections. For example, I'll start my selections faster than ever before. In this segment, I'll go over how it's used with the StudioMagic panel, and I'll show you how to quickly isolate people in portraits from backgrounds. Okay, first thing I have to do is choose a selection brush. Then I'm going to go ahead and select the subject, and I'm going to watch it as it renders. The dancing ants will go around the football player, and it'll miss a couple of spots here. It's a good starting point. Those are the spots that it's missed when viewing in the quick mask mode. Now I'm going to use my quick selection brush. I'm just going to go ahead and make some modifications here, and a little under his arm here by the jersey and the jersey itself. There we go. Now what I'd like to do is drag him onto the background here. I highly recommend you using the Select Subject feature if you have Creative Cloud 2018 or greater. Okay, in the sky replacement demonstration, always check Detect Outside Edges when replacing skies. Now I'm going to select the Magic Wand tool, and I'm going to go into the tolerance and keep it at 20. I want to make sure that you're always adding to the selection. That's very important. And now I'm going to, using the Magic Wand tool, I'm going to begin clicking on the sky and in the pond as well. And I just keep clicking away as I'm adding to my selection. I'm going to select Similar, which is selecting similar pixels. That's very, very important. And now all the pixels are selected, including those in the pond. They're all the same color tones and values. Now I'm going to click on Detailed Cutout, and it's going to bring me into the selected mask mode. In the earlier versions, it was referred to as Refine Edge. And now I'm going to take my Refine Edge brush, and I'm going to slowly go around the tree, and I'm going to remove all the unwanted sky behind the leaves and the branches of the tree. There we go. And I will continue to do it around the pond as well. I'm just going to slowly remove all the white fringing so the sky will reflect into the pond. And also here on the left of the pond as well, I'm going to remove the white fringing there as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish up here, just adding a little bit more refining, and that looks pretty good. And now I'm going to hit OK. And you want to make sure that the background is always selected when you drag in your sky. By selecting the background, the new sky will always be positioned behind the foreground. So make sure you select that background as I'm showing you right here. And now we're going to drag the sky in. Now what I want to do is dial back the opacity to match the mood of the foreground. Make sure you select the layer, the sky layer. There's the opacity slider. Now drag it back to the left until it matches the mood of the foreground. And that looks pretty good. This demonstration is using the quick mask mode where I'm able to paint on the mask and remove the unwanted pixels. So let's go ahead and we'll detect the outside edges. Make sure that's selected when you do skies. Now we're going to go ahead with the Magic Wand tool and I'm going to select the tolerance of 32 and make sure that you add to the selection. Make sure that's checked. Now I'm going to click inside and I'm going to choose areas where we want to remove the unwanted sky. I'm not going to do too much of it because I'll be able to go to select and I'm going to go to similar and I'm going to select similar pixels. So all the hue and the tonations will be selected, but unfortunately, as you can see, sometimes it also spills into the foreground. But that's not a problem because we can get rid of that by painting on the mask. So what I want to do is I want to be able to get rid of those by painting on the unwanted pixels. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select my brush tool and I want to make sure that it's hard. So I'm going to right click inside the image here and I'm going to put the hardness to 0 and that just gives me better control. Now I'm just going to go ahead and hit D on my keyboard, bringing up the foreground being black, and now I'm going to be able to paint out those nasty pixels. And as you can see, I'm going to do that here at just the first part. Now let me click out of the quick mask and you'll see that they're gone. Let's click back in. I'll do a little more touch up here and I'll start painting away. Take a look again and they're gone. And then one more time we'll do a final touch up. I'll enlarge my brush with the bracket keys and with one big fell swoop you'll see that all the nasty pixels in the foreground have been eliminated. Now we're going to do the detailed cutout. So after finishing the masking and the removal of the pixels, let's go ahead to the detailed cutout. And what I'm going to accomplish here is I'm going to start erasing, if you will, all the white fringing behind the leaves and the branches. And I'm going to very meticulously go around everything. I'm going to keep sizing my brush larger and smaller using the bracket keys. It'll save me time the larger, but I want to also get a little bit smaller. Say I don't touch up the bark of the trees. And now let's go around the tree line on the left hand side as well, and I'll just keep painting away until I feel comfortable that much, if not all, of the white fringe is gone. So that having been done, I think we're going to hit OK. And now if I select the background layer, that means that the sky will be brought behind the foreground layer. So let me just go ahead now and select that. And now I want to drag in the sky. And this is the donor sky that's in our collection. And as you see, when I drag it in, it's going to go behind the castle because I had selected the background layer. Now I'm going to enlarge it using Command T, or in your case, if you have a PC, it would be Control T. And what I want to do is dial back the opacity. And because we have a neutral gray layer underneath it rather than a transparent layer, we can do that. And as you can see here on the right, I'm dialing back the opacity. I'll take it all the way to the left and now move it slowly to the right until it matches the mood of the foreground. I can't tell you how often I'm asked, where should I set my tolerance setting? The Adobe default value is 32. If you've selected everything that you wanted on the first try, that's great. If it's selected more than you wanted, then lower the tolerance setting. The same applies if you selected less than raise the tolerance setting. I'll show you how this all works on a sky. Okay, I'm going to select the Magic Wand tool and we're going to go crazy. We're going to do a tolerance of 200. And remember, Adobe's is 32. As you can see, the spill is way into the foreground, which is absolutely ridiculous. So now let's go ahead and let's set the tolerance to 4. We're going to go from 200 to 4. This is an extreme example, of course. And now at 4, let's go ahead and hit the quick mask, and as you can see, it's hugging the building perfectly. So the bottom line is that you're going to have to work with tolerances yourself. Now let's use the tolerance of 4, And now I'm going to click on Detailed Cutout after my final selection. And now I'm in the Select and Mask mode, also known as Refine Edge. And let's just go ahead and refine the edges of the trees here, the tree line. And then I'm going to go around the tree line just to the left of the tall steeple. And I'll just clean that area up a little bit. And then to the very left of the steeple, and finish cleaning that up. And then we're going to go ahead and select OK. And give me a second here, we'll just finish that up as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Okay, now I'm going to select the background layer. That will ensure that the new sky will be positioned behind the foreground layer. Okay, I'm going to drag in the new sky from our collection. And I'm going to reposition it. There we go. And what I want to do is dial back the opacity to see that the sky opacity fits the opacity or mood of the foreground layer. Okay, what I want to do, we shot the gals in the studio, and what I want to do is I want to match the Las Vegas sign, the shadow behind it. So I'm going to click on the gal on the right, and I want to be able to match that shadow. So there she is. Let's go ahead and click on her, and I'm going to hit the shadow caster with the drop down, and we're going to create a new shadow which is automatically a 2 o'clock position. There we go. And now what I want to do is I want to be able to copy that shadow. So let's go to the shadow reference clock, click on it, and let's take a look. And it looks like it's probably in the 11 o'clock position. So I'm going to go ahead and click on 11 o'clock. These are the factory presets, and I'll just dial down here to 11 o'clock. Click on that, and there it is. And I'll just nudge her back a little bit. There we go. Now I'm going to copy that shadow, and I'm going to paste that shadow onto the girl on the left, and it's going to pick up the same configuration. And I'm going to paste it, and there we go. I want to match the shorebird shadow with the gal. So let's go ahead here, and we're going to create a new shadow, and it automatically comes in at the 2 o'clock position. I'm going to call up the preview page, which is the Shadowcaster reference clock, and let's just take a look. And it looks like it would probably be a 5 o'clock shadow. So let's close that out, and let's go to the 5 o'clock shadow. Click on that, and that looks pretty good. I'm going to nudge my slider a little bit to the left in real time to elongate the shadow, and that looks very believable. I'm going to create a new shadow, the girl on the left, and it comes in at the 2 o'clock position. And I want to change that shadow with our factory presets. I'm going to call it wall back left. Now I'm going to copy that shadow, and I'm going to select the gal on the right, and I'm going to paste that shadow, and it picks up her configuration. Now I want to modify that shadow because I want to save it as a preset. So I'm going to slant it a little bit to the left. I'm going to change the intensity a little bit by nudging the slider in real time, and then I'm going to create the softness by moving it to the right. And now that's my own preset, and now I want to go ahead and save that preset, and I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to call it Gavin's Wall Back Soft. And I'm going to hit OK, and now I've saved that as a preset. Now I'm going to select the shadow on the left and locate Gavin's preset. So there's a drop down, and the presets are on the top, and the factory presets are on the bottom. There's Gavin's preset. I'll click on it. As you can see, it turns to soft. So when we go back into the managing of the presets, you're going to see that the factory presets are on the bottom and your personal presets are on the top. And if you choose to remove a preset, you can select it and click on Remove Preset. You can also remove or hide any of the factory presets. Here's a speedy way to copy and paste the shadow. I'm going to select the tree on the left, and I'm going to create a shadow, modify it slightly. Then I'm going to copy that shadow, and I'm going to paste that shadow onto the tree in the background, and I'll hit paste. I'll select the next tree and hit paste, and I'll select the tree in the background, hit paste, and I'll select the tree in the foreground and hit paste, and that's all there is to it. Okay, you've now selected light brush, and now we're going to paint with light. Select paint with light, and when you select paint with light, there's by default a 55% adjustment layer that covers the image. StudioMagic has provided a brush to begin to paint the light on the image. Okay, let's start painting. I'm going to right click in the image, and let's make sure that the brush hardness is set at 0%. Now I will proceed to paint on the mask with the defaulted brush. The foreground color is set to black, as you can see below, enabling you to paint through the mask to reveal the light as I'm doing here. And I'm just going to continue clicking here, and I'm going to turn the lights of New York City on. There we go. Let me show you how to create a straight line. You click in one spot, hold the Shift key down, move to another spot, and release. It's that simple. Hold the Shift key down, we go to another spot, and release. Now let's try it on the StudioMagic Light Ray. You click here, click there, and release. You click on the top, you hold your Shift key down, and you release. Once again, you click at the top starting point, go to the bottom starting point with your Shift key down and release, and do it one more time. And that's it, and that's how it works. Now we're going to apply the Shift click on the StudioMagic Light Burst. We'll paint with light. You have the adjustment layer. I'll start at the starting point here, hold my Shift key down, take it to another point, and release. There we go, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. Now what's nice about this, you have an adjustment layer, and now you can dial back the opacity to create the lighting mood that you are trying to accomplish. Here's how you use the Shift click for everything. We're going to paint with light, go to one spot here, hold the Shift key down, go to another spot, and release. And just continue to do that until you get the desired effect. There you go. It works perfectly. And now what you want to do is you can dial the opacity back to achieve your desired effect. And we just keep moving it back and forth here until you feel comfortable with it. Here's a case where there's a little light spill. So what you can do is you can hit X on your keyboard, turn the foreground layer to white, and now you can paint on the layer to remove the spill. Here's another example of painting with the Shift click. You click in the top spot, you hold your Shift key down, you go to the bottom, and you release. You go to the top location, hold your Shift key down, go to the bottom location where you want it, and you release. And you do that a few more times. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to purposely spill over here a little bit, so therefore it's spilled over. It doesn't quite line up with the window. So what I want to be able to do is just hit X on your keyboard, and all you have to do is then paint on the layer to remove the spill. And there we go. Okay, we're going to do the Shift click again. But this time what I want to do is to show you sometimes the vignette of 55% is a little bit on the dark side. So we're going to go Shift click and take a look. The vignette's a little bit too pronounced. I want to blend it a little bit, so let's dial back the 55%, and that feels and looks a lot better. Here's how to add some drama to the photo. Dial back on the flow to around 20%. And now let's go ahead and bring out the highlights in her hair. Just painting on the mask brings out the highlights. And this is what you call painting with light. Now let's go ahead and illuminate her face. There we go. And then just finish off by painting the rest of her hair, the highlights on her hair. And over to the left a little bit. There we go. Very slowly, very meticulously, just paint away. And that'll do it. Let's talk about the StudioMagic One panel. First thing I'm going to do, we want to show you how to set up your workspace. You hit Window, then you go to Windows Extensions, StudioMagic 1, that's where it's stored, and there it is on your screen. Now let's go to Windows, Extensions, and bring in StudioMagic 2. There we go, StudioMagic 2. Now as you see, there's a lot of clutter, so what we want to do is we want to show you how to dock this. So the next thing we're going to do is pick out some of your favorites. In this case, I happen to use layers. You guys might use actions or libraries, but I just happen to use layers, and sometimes I use actions. And then let's go ahead, and this time I'm going to use the tools. There we go. Now I'm just going to go ahead and dock it. And when you do that, you're going to see a blue line. So I'm just going to drag it over here, and we'll just move the panels in place here. And now let's grab this panel, and I like to keep it up and down, and as you see, there's a blue line right there. When you see the blue line, it's docked. Now let's go ahead and dock the toolbar, and once again you'll see the blue line, and there we go. So now what I want to do is I want to be able to save the workspace. So we're going to go to Windows, Workspace, New Workspace. I'm going to name it StudioMagic Palettes, and then I'm going to hit Save. And when I hit Save, it saves it, but actually you really want to shut Photoshop down and restart it again to make sure that you have definitely saved it. So let's close the StudioMagic Palettes, and let's go back to Windows, our workspace, and as you can see, come down below here, it says reset the StudioMagic palettes. Just click on that, and there they are, they're all set. And then after saving your palette, close Photoshop and reopen it again, and that will save your work.